Right, so I've owned the Tesla Model Y for about 6 months now, and I was going to do a review straight away, but I thought that's not going to be very helpful for you, because how can you properly get to know a car inside out in that short amount of time? You need to really get to know all of the little features and details, pros and cons, all the quirks, especially when jumping from a petrol or diesel engine, which I've previously owned. Things you can only really know after a good few miles. So here we are, 6 months in. What's it really been like to drive in terms of comfort and enjoyment, the software and infotainment system, app usage and connectivity subscription, hardware and build quality, charging including home and public options, and the dreaded range anxiety that you'll only truly know if you've driven an EV before, but I'll try and explain even for those that haven't, and everything in between. And crucially, do I regret going for the Model Y? Do I regret going for Tesla in general over another electric vehicle? And do I regret going electric full stop? Spoiler alert, I've absolutely loved some elements of this car, but it's not all been plain sailing, which is a pun. Travel, cars, boats. Shocker. Now, for reference, if you haven't seen any of my content before, then I am more of a tech reviewer than necessarily a car guy, even though I have done car content before. So if there are any car terminologies, etc. that I don't mention that I possibly should, then I can only apologise. But I'm 100% sure, regardless of that, if you are looking at getting a new Tesla, or you are indeed just interested in knowing what it's like to own and drive an EV, you will find this video useful and hopefully enjoyable. And of course, there's a glut ton of tech here too in the Tesla Model Y, which I'd like to think I'm pretty clued up on. Like the infotainment system on this huge 15.4-inch tablet-like screen. Now you can control pretty much anything you want to do in the car, all from this display, from sat-nav to steering, charging, and much, much more. Within the lock section, you can add your key cards that Tesla provide you with on order when the car arrives to unlock and drive your car. But this isn't the most optimum option, in my opinion, because number one, you have to get the card out of your wallet. You have to then try and place it on the side of the car door in the right place to use the NFC technology, like a contactless payment in a shop. And then you have to have the card placed in this central section here below the cup holders. And there isn't even a little inlet here to stop the card from sliding about. It doesn't seem the most thought out process. But then I don't actually think there'll be many people that will use this method once they've set up the car. As you can also pair a fob, which you can have on your house keys, and you can open the car, drive the car, open the boot, etc. But the fob is £170 as an extra, which I think, considering the amount of money you're spending on a new Tesla, you'd like to think the ability to open the car with a fob would come as standard. However, even though I think that is a little bit naughty from Tesla, you can of course just straight up use your phone, which is what I do. Using the Bluetooth and the Tesla app on your device of choice, iPhone or Android, the car simply unlocks when you approach it and locks when you move out of that proximity zone. Now this of course has one possible security problem. If you lose your phone, someone can gain access to your car. But I do have a special tip which I strongly advise you to do, and that is to set up a pin on your display, because as soon as you get in the car, you can't drive it until you've inputted the prompted PIN number. So even if somebody gets into your car, they can't drive it. Also on the app, you can check things like your car's location or the car's cameras by enabling Sentry mode. You can open your boot, both front and back, and you can also lock and unlock the car all remotely. You can adjust the aircon settings prior to getting in the car, so you don't come back to that dreaded sun-baked sauna-like heat with the melting metal seatbelt buckle. And then there are also things like pet settings and a window vent option to keep dogs, etc. safe. But when your phone's not handy, your central screen also has similar access to your climate controls, which are hugely customizable. You have this bioweapon defense mode, which, while it may sound a little bit dramatic, using a high efficiency particulate air filter, or HEPA, or HEPA as it's known by the cool kids, it does help protect you from various air pollutants like exhaust fumes and smoke, airborne pathogens, bacteria, viruses and mold spores, and odours and pollen for you hay fever sufferers out there. It may come in handy. I don't know, I don't have hay fever. Apologies if I'm rubbing salt in the wound. But I do think this is a pretty cool feature which I haven't really seen on many other cars, if any. But if you like that, you may also like this. I mean, it's not for me personally, but I know some of you out there will be a big fan of this tomfoolery. You can only use this in park mode though, so you can't drive up to the traffic lights, wind down your window, and just let out a stink bomb, unless you put it in park very quickly. Yeah, it might be doable. Try it and let me know. You also have your apps available, which you can drag and drop to have quick access to your favourites, and you can add up to a total of 5. I do feel like I'm always needing a 6th or a 7th. Would be nice to have more than 5, including the likes of Bluetooth, radio, your wipers, a theatre app, more on that in a second, and Spotify, etc. Now, Spotify does seem to be a free service here once you set your car connectivity to the premium account, which is $9.99 a month. But I've also read that Spotify is a 30-day free trial. I don't know for sure because I've only just activated that Spotify account. But for that $9.99 Tesla connectivity account, you basically have a package that gives you all the functions that require an internet connection: web browser, music and video streaming, gaming, and more. Originally, I would just tether from my phone. I have unlimited data, so that made sense. But I did notice that there seems to be a drop-off in that connection reliability when you go from using it to then going to drive. Everything shuts down for obvious reasons in terms of safety, but then when you stop the car, park the car, you then, I found, have to reconnect your phone's tethering to the car again, and that seems a bit faffy. If you just want to go straight in and use that connectivity as soon as you stop the car, that is a little bit of a faffy issue with tethering, and there may be a safety reason behind that from Tesla, or they may do it secretly as a way to get you to go premium, like they did with me. So it may just be a problem I'm having, and I'm interested to hear from fellow Tesla drivers, or it may be done by design. The cynic in me believes it might be the latter. For me though, I am glad I've added that subscription because it just guarantees the connection works, and this is very important for me. I feel there's no point in having all of these cool, smart connectivity features if you have to faff to get them to start. Like, what's the point? Right. The use of the theatre mode, for example, when you want to park the car and chuck on a bit of Netflix or Disney Plus for the kids in the back while you're having a rest, a bite to eat, a drink, etc. And it just works straight away, which I think is quite important. I think time is incredibly valuable. And this is why I also decide to generally update the software as soon as the upgrades are available. These software updates, which can be initiated in the car or on your smartphone, you will get a notification of a software upgrade available, offer the chance to push the latest technological breakthroughs that Tesla are working on. One such technological breakthrough is, of course, Tesla's famed autopilot or autosteer or autonomous driving. Woohoo! Hands on the wheel at all times. But we'll talk more on that when we talk full driving experience in a second. Outside of the screen, there really is nothing else on the dashboard, and Teslas are actually really fairly limited in terms of functions or buttons, which can be a little irritating at times. Like with the whole smart movement, sometimes just a designated hardware button or lever actually is easier and quicker to do. Outside of the two knobs on the wheel and the driving levers, there really is no other way to control things. The levers help to control your windscreen fluid and windscreen wipe, but you can't seem to customize things like the speed of your wipers without the screen. You can't adjust the mirrors without using the screen. And if you're driving, this can be a little bit fiddly. In terms of the right stick, which puts your car into a movement direction, either drive or reverse, I have noticed occasionally when I try and jump in and move quickly either forwards or backwards, it sometimes takes a few goes to actually engage. You do have to be quite deliberate with it, put your foot on the brake and press quite slowly and firmly, and then it engages. And I don't know whether this is done by design to stop accidental touches, because nobody wants to go backwards when you're meaning to go forwards, etc. But it is something that I think I would prefer it to be slightly more responsive from a starting position. It's just sometimes a little bit frustrating. The two knobs on the wheel, which in itself is okay, it's fairly comfortable to hold for long journeys, it does the job if a little bland, they have some customization also. The right can control voice assistant and decide how many car spaces behind you want to be from the car in front when you're using cruise control, more on that later, because as you'll see it can basically self-drive to a point, and the left knob controls play, pause, skipping tracks and volume, and it opens the glove box with a press and hold. Now, pressing both together resets the center screen. And I only found this out when searching for the dreaded black screen problem, which has happened a couple of times now, where I'd gone back to the car, I'd opened the car, got in, the sound of the car turning on was there, my music even started playing, but there was no screen functionality. I was touching it, nothing was happening, it was just black. This meant because I had the pin on the car, I couldn't drive the car. So I was like, that's a bit of a design flaw. But luckily, like I said, press and hold the two knobs for about 30 seconds and the Tesla logo reappears in the middle of the screen and then it comes back on. No problems. Like I said, it's happened twice, a little bit frustrating, but no major biggie. Outside of that, you have two wireless charging pads here in the front and you have two USB Type-C charging ports here in the back that you can plug in a cable. And there really is a lot of space inside the Model Y, not only in terms of seating, layout and legroom, but also in terms of storage and boot space. We've done beach trips, airport runs, and just simple things like school runs, and I've been able to pretty much fit anything I've wanted to into the car during that time. You can also buy a roof rack and a towing accessory as well, but both are unnecessary for me personally. You can easily fit 4 adults and at a slight squeeze 5 into the Model Y, with ample room to stretch your legs because there's no central section here, and there's decent enough headroom with the panorama glass roof also making it feel that little bit more spacious. For reference, I'm 6'1". Storage bins in the front and back doors are of a decent size. And this central section here also has tons of extra storage, both under this flap here and also inside here. Loads of places for you to store all of your important gear, or in my case, just junk. So we're gonna close that because that's embarrassing. That's probably been there for about 4 months. The boot is pretty huge as well, at around 850 litres, and you also have a second compartment underneath, which I use to store my standard charging cable, the Menekes cable, and this cheeky little Lectron cable here. More on that little gem when we talk about charging in a minute. And you also have around 120 litres in the front, because there is of course no engine, so we have a fruit, or a frunk, if you're American. Trunk, frunk, boot, fruit. Yeah, but in terms of space, it really is an excellent family car. If you have children and want to use car seats, this can again be done, although Teslas have a strange way of doing things, I think, compared to normal cars that I've tried before. They don't actually have designated holders. At first, I thought this was a little bit strange, and I do have slight concerns over possible wear and tear between the two bits of leather, but I guess only time will tell on that. Outside of that, these seats have held up pretty well. Again, being a young family, we've had toys and remnants of beaches coming back with us from day trips, and after giving it a good clean up, safe to say there haven't been too many problems in terms of wear signs. Now, I have purchased separately covers to go in the boot, on the floor where the feet go, etc. And although this is an added cost, I would strongly recommend doing this if you are keeping the car for a prolonged period of time. Links to the ones that I've bought in the video description below, but no pressure to go and buy them. It's not that sort of channel. Now, I have noticed one issue with the car seat in terms of the inbuilt alarm system that registers when it feels weight on the seat and prompts you to put your seatbelt on. So if you're a person and you're in there, it's going to go off. If you've got a heavy bag, again on the seat, it's going to go off. The same problem applies when you're using the car seat. It senses there's a child sat on the back seat and the alert seems to go off. And it's not until I've had to actually manually plug the seatbelt in behind the car seat that goes off. And that is a little bit irritating. It should, as soon as the car seat is connected to that rung, there should be some form of system that signals to the car that they're locked in, because they've got the seatbelt on in the car seat. They don't need that one to actually be plugged in as well. Now, I did research online and it looked like there is, or at least used to be, a way of manually turning that alert off once it pops up on your central screen. But when I've tried to do it, it doesn't seem to do that. So maybe it's just the way I'm doing it, maybe I'm not doing it properly, but when I'm pressing on that alert, nothing's happening. I can't manually turn it off, and I've had to manually plug in the car seat. Otherwise, you're going to be getting that noise going off the whole journey, which I suppose is okay if you're into a bit of trance nation. Moving on, and speaking of music, the Model Y has a 14-speaker audio system with 9 speakers in the front, 4 in the back, and a subwoofer in the boot, and you also have 2 amplifiers as well. It is a little bit echoey because of all the space and the hard surfaces, but you can adjust the car's audio EQ, not that I have, and while it may not be the best sounding car on the planet, for an electric SUV, it's probably one of, if not the best. Now in terms of range, I have the rear wheel drive model, which gives you apparently 283 miles on a full charge. Now for reference, this is the exact equivalent of travelling from London to Newcastle. Weirdly, 283 miles to the exact point, according to Google Maps. Now, I did actually want the 20-inch black induction wheels upgrade from the 19-inch Geminis, but with stock issues, it meant that if I wanted the car there and then around April, when I ordered it, the standard Geminis were the only ones available in stock. And to be fair, with these wheel covers on, you can almost achieve the same look and you get a few extra miles range. Yes, I probably still would have preferred to get the induction wheels, and had I had more time or had them in stock, then I would have gone with that. But personally, I think these really are the best covers available for Gemini wheels if you want that induction look. And again, I'll leave them listed in the video description if they're still available. I have no idea. But what about range and the dreaded range anxiety?
Range anxiety, the fear you're going to run out of charge mid-journey without a charging station in sight. Dead car. Stranded.
Well, this is where two main points come to mind, and subjectivity is key because it really does depend on number one, your daily routine, and number two, your living setup, your house, and your availability to include a home charging connector. I work from home, I don't do a huge amount of miles, and I have the luxury of having a Tesla home wall connector installed at my property. This means that I've only ever used a public charging station 4 times in nearly 6 months. And 2 of those were before I'd even had the connector installed at my house. Tesla charging stations are often in car parks at the back of hotels, etc. And you can search for them and they will let you know if there are spaces vacant. And I don't really know anyone that's really had a problem with availability when arriving at one. This may change as Teslas become more popular and or when Teslas start opening more sites up to standard EV charging for non-Tesla cars. But one of those times I used a Tesla public charger was coming back from a week in Anglesey, and I used the Tesla supercharging station in Flint. The sat-nav told me I wasn't going to have enough battery to get home from my trip away, and it said that I would need to go to that specific charger because it was en route, and I needed about 10 miles top up to get fully back home. Now, when I arrived, I plugged it in, the Tesla pump recognised my car without me doing anything, and by the time I'd been to the toilet at the hotel, the car told me I had enough charge to get home. I think it cost me around £2.50 and 5 minutes, if that, 3 minutes I think it was, and that top up was charged directly to my account as I'd set up my bank account through the Tesla app. But this is one of the things I love about this car. You type in your destination and it tells you what battery level you should have when you arrive. Based on the speeds it predicts you to go using the speed limits on said journey. Again, this helps to reduce that range anxiety. The slower you go, the longer the battery will last. The quicker you go, the quicker it will drain. So if you are looking to eke out a few extra miles on that battery, the key is to slow down a bit. So if you want to go 60 and a 70, for example, for about 30 minutes, you will get a decent chunk of battery added on. Another cheeky tip, turn off your Sentry mode if you want to save battery. Standby drain is significantly more when you have this enabled. Now, the Tesla charging network is the most complete out of any EV company. But there are also a lot of other non-Tesla charging sites that you can connect to using this Menekes cable. These are often slightly slower than the Tesla superchargers, which can also range in power and therefore speeds themselves. So a full charge at one of these could take you anywhere up to 4 or 5 hours. And payment is a little bit more faffy with downloading specific apps, scanning QR codes, tapping your contactless card on the machines, etc. It's not incredibly difficult, but it's no Tesla supercharge experience. And those longer charging speeds will make longer journeys significantly less enjoyable than a petrol or diesel car. And this brings me back to my original point. Personally, I would only get a Tesla or an EV if I had a home connector already installed or I have a very small amount of mileage. If none of these apply, I don't know why you would deal with the hassle. If your miles are high but you have a home fast charger, then fine. If you don't have a home fast charger but your miles are low, then again, also fine. I'm a double whammy because I have low miles and I have a home charger, so it works perfect for me, but you may not be in the same boat. there's that pun again. Travel, sailing, but it cut. No, rubbish again. I can plug my car in overnight to charge for a couple of hours and wake up to a full 100% battery. And even if your commute to work, for example, is substantial, you shouldn't have any problems getting from A to B without the worry of finding and using a public charger if you fast charged at home, because you have a guaranteed 100% when you start. Not many people are going to be driving from London to Newcastle or even half that distance in one day. And if you do, then you are going to be probably looking at a petrol or diesel, a van, something like that. But for me, knowing that I could leave the house every morning with a 100% battery is an experience like nothing I've had before. You can never really get that on a standard car. So it's a big plus in my eyes. And charging is also significantly cheaper with electric vehicles, although you do have to factor in, like I said, getting a home charger installed, for example. That is an added expense that you wouldn't have normally. If you don't have a fast charger, you can still use the standard charging cable that comes in the car, and this can connect to any home socket, but it does take like half a day to charge, so frequent drivers with quick turnarounds would struggle, and the cable itself might not actually be long enough to reach a power outlet. Again, if you don't do many miles and your turnaround isn't that quick, then you could make do with that standard charger. Charge it for half a day here and there when you're not using it, and then every second or third day when you use the car, you're gonna have a full battery again. But if you're using the car 2 days in a row for more than 1 or 2 miles, then this is where you're going to struggle. If you are looking to use the standard charger, say you're away and using another property that doesn't have a home fast charging connector, I strongly recommend that you purchase something like this Lectron Extension cord, which can safely and efficiently connect to your standard charger if said charger doesn't reach your car from the power outlet. Again, you don't need it, and again, it is another expense, but it may be incredibly useful, and again, avoiding range anxiety.
But what about the actual driving experience? Now, I've heard a lot of people mention that it is quite jerky and the suspension is incredibly firm, and while I can't say that isn't factually a little bit true, I don't think it's quite as bad as many make out.
Changing lanes at high speeds did take a little bit of getting used to. It does feel a little bit light and jerky, and potholes and speed bumps are a little on the bumpy side. But all in all, it's a fairly comfortable drive, and the zip out of the blocks at traffic lights, for example, on an EV, and in particular Teslas, is a joy. The instant acceleration on an electric vehicle is just a joke. I don't condone speeding though.
70 mile an hour tops for you Ricky Gervais fans out there.
Disclaimer. Get that in your notebook. I don't know what that is. What are you doing?
Now, the reverse of this is, of course, braking, which is almost non-existent thanks to the regen system, which basically not only charges the battery as and when you slow down, but as soon as you take your foot off the accelerator, the car comes to a stop, like so.
Once you get the hang of being able to gauge your natural stopping distances, it's so enjoyable not having that jerky accelerate brake mentality that you see drivers everywhere have, especially at roundabouts and traffic lights. The car will automatically go into park once stopped, so you won't roll, and then as soon as you hit the accelerator again, you're away. It's just so simple. You can adjust the regen to behave more like a standard motor car, but I've enjoyed this experience. You can still also use the brake pedal if needed, and this is also really nice and responsive and natural feeling underfoot. And the only time I found the experience to be a little too jerky is the odd occasion when the auto cruise control is slightly too responsive. What I mean by this is when I'm driving on the motorway or dual carriageway, for example, I will tend to put it into cruise control, and the car will naturally brake when the car in front begins to slow down or somebody pulls out, for example. Your car will naturally react to that and adjust the distance between you and the car in front. And I believe it uses the onboard cameras to do so. You can adjust, like I said, the distance from the car in front in your settings, but it's just nice knowing you can stay a safe distance from the car in front without really having to do a great deal. And this is ingenious tech. It makes long distance journeys a dream, and you will also get alerts and a corrective steer if the car feels like you aren't staying in the lane as you should be. If you're not paying attention, it'll tell you, even if it's a little bit sometimes oversensitive. Sometimes if someone in front brakes hard and fast, or somebody pulls out and or changes lanes very quickly, it sometimes can over-anticipate and brake a little too jerkily. And this is just something I've again had to get used to. If you're easily flappable like my wife, you may let out a little screech every time this happens. But if you're more like me, a bit more relaxed, and you are in control of the car, you know it's probably going to do that. If you see somebody pulling out, then you're not going to be as stressed out by that experience. And I suppose it's better to be over precautious than under and smash into the back of the car in front. Right?
But what about the full autopilot driving experience that Tesla are famed for? Well, it is still in beta, so I'm not sure how complete the technology is right now, but it really does work, and it's incredibly fun and impressive all at the same time. Now, occasionally you do get a little prompt just to make sure your hands are near the steering wheel in case of an emergency, but the fact that this is even possible is incredibly impressive. Now, the way it works is the car uses the cameras on the outside of the car to check out road markings and make sure you are staying within the lane, and you can also speed up and slow down based on the car in front, as you can see we've just done there because we've approached a traffic light here. There has been a couple of hairy moments where I've had to take over the steering wheel as and when we've approached a B road with limited road markings, for example, but on the whole it's worked really, really well. And I'm not going to lie, it is incredibly fun. I feel a bit like Batman. Now, Tesla do say it's designed for motorway and long distance driving, but I have tested it on a couple of A and B roads as well, and on the whole, it has worked incredibly well across the board. Occasionally you do get a prompt, as you can see here. Just make sure you keep your hands nice and vigilant near the steering wheel in case of an emergency.
The beta warning may be enough to tempt you not to use this feature though, and I'm also not a fan of the parking alerts. While the new camera distance detection system seems to work fine, I've not smashed the car into a wall, for example, I do feel like I've been overly cautious when parking. Like, I'll leave more than enough space when really I could be a little bit tighter. And this is simply because the system says it's been downgraded from the previous model, going from the sensor system to this camera version. There may be a suitable reason why Tesla have done this, and it may be better in the long run, I don't know, but it's never nice seeing that you've just bought a new car and you've got a message saying this isn't actually as good, or it's been downgraded from the previous car. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. It just makes you feel like they know it may not be as good, and therefore they have to let you know in case there's an accident. Doesn't fill you with a huge amount of confidence. Visibility is good. You can see pretty much everywhere with large glass on all sides, although at the back you can't really see all that well. A trade-off for that slightly sporty coupe slope look. Again, you can use the onboard cameras to check behind you if needed, and when you indicate, the side cameras flash up to show if there's a car coming up behind you. And all these cameras can be set up to record said footage in the event of an accident where the insurance company may require the footage, for example. And the video clips from the previously mentioned Sentry mode can also be saved, and you will get a notification and you can play it back watching the screen if there's anyone standing around your car meddling. Auto full beam works really well, lowering the beam as and when the car sees another oncoming car, even if it's a fraction slower, to change from what I would manually do most of the time. The center car location for sat-nav is really handy, and I love the fact that you can upgrade your car with a 20-minute patch through your phone. It would be cool if there was a way to clean the glass roof outside of going to a car wash, but I don't know how feasible that would be. And a heads-up display would be a nice addition on the windscreen, although again the negativity around this of having to look slightly down and left to the screen to look at the speedometer as opposed to looking down on a normal car, it's the same distance. Yeah, I don't think the hype around that problem is all that it's cracked up to be. I haven't noticed that being an issue at all. And all in all, outside of the points that I've made on the negatives, the Tesla Model Y has been an absolute joy to own and drive. This is the first EV I've owned, and while I wouldn't say I'm 100% always now going to drive electric vehicles, I do feel with that technology now available, it would be hard pushed for me to go back to driving a motorised car. Any questions you have, let me know in the comment section below. I'll try my best to answer them. Follow me on my other social medias for short form content on Teslas, EVs and tech in general. And I'm also going to try and get hold of the brand new, soon to be released Tesla Model 3. So make sure you subscribe for that. My name's Adam. You've been the best as always. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. Stay SPOT. Peace out.